Roses, the flower of love, and we happen to find ourselves at the right place at the right time. Roses are beginning to bloom, and we are in Jemison, Alabama at Petals from the Past. This is one to dream on.
Yes, it is. This is Rev d'Or. This is one of the old tea noisettes. So this is in the late 1800s being introduced, right? When they began to cross the old garden teas with the smaller noisettes.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Explain what a noisette is.
Well, it's the class that these belong to. It was named for Philip Noisette from France, but his brother-in-law, John Champneys, was the one that originally used it, and we're going to look at that rose today, the first rose introduced in the United States.
Well, I was correct. Jason Powell here at Petals from the Past is going to fill us in with some information that's invaluable. All right, where was this found?
This rose is called Katy Road Pink when I first learned about it, and it was a study rose that the Antique Rose Emporium found outside of Houston, Texas on the way to Katy, Texas. So the rose rustlers, go out, we root those cuttings, and then we try to identify it. Well, nobody knew what it was circulated, and eventually they just gave it a study name, and then it began to get into circulation. Well, later on, they found out this had been introduced as Carefree Beauty many years earlier by Dr. Griffith Buck from Iowa State. So it's in the trade now as Katy Road Pink that I knew it as, or Carefree Beauty. But look at this thing.
It's I don't know, there are no words.
I agree.
But interestingly, you said rose rustlers.
Yeah.
So were these roses that primarily were in Texas and in that area, or other locations?
All over the U.S. And in fact, there was a movement that began in the Northeast. There was a movement in California, and then there was also a movement in Texas. When you start looking at the history of these roses enjoying a renaissance, they were forgotten about. 1867, the first modern hybrid tea rose was introduced.
Yes.
And then everybody forgot about these other guys. Well, they survived at old home places, at cemeteries,
That's right.
and thankfully they survived until we rediscovered them. And that's where those three movements were coming from. And so Katy Road Pink thankfully stood out because it could bloom outside of Houston, Texas, spring, summer, fall.
That was my next question.
Oh.
So this does have periodic times for blooming.
It does, and these blooms are followed by a hip. You remember the rose hip
Yes.
was the original reason roses were grown, because of the vitamin C content. So
Right.
great medicinal herb. Well, Katy Road Pink not only has great fragrance, it's got disease resistance, it blooms spring, summer, fall, but it also makes a hip.
And I was looking to see if it was starting a hip already. See, there they are.
Exactly. So when we pop that guy off of there, it's just small, but that will end up being about the size of a nickel.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready.
Me too.
Next one.
All right. This is Old Blush. This is one of the oldest roses that we grow in cultivation here at the nursery. This rose was introduced in 1752, and it's a member of the China class. And you remember there are single-petaled Chinas that were introduced 1,000 years before the birth of Christ.
Wow.
One of the unique things that you and I were talking about, I like about this, is that it's the first rose to bloom in the garden every year. And it's also the last to finish. So this rose will still be in bloom at Christmas. But it's flushes, like you were talking about earlier. It's not that it blooms and stays in bloom, but they come in flushes and then they'll take a breather. Then they flush again, and then they'll take a breather. But
You can always find one to cut and take in the house.
Amen.
And these roses grow on their own roots, so you don't have to worry about anything that's been grafted. And even this own root has come over here and made a new bush. hasn't it?
Exactly, and that's the beauty of it. And when you look at the base of that rose, this rose was planted here 29 years ago. So it has been in that one spot, and you can see all those old trunks, and after about 9 or 10 years, it was becoming less floriferous.
Right.
So we cut it hard, and all these new canes come right back out from the base. You don't have to worry about replacing these old garden roses. Just prune and feed.
Yeah.
Prune and feed.
That's the beauty of doing a hard cutback. Makes
Amen.
think I gotta catch up and grow.
Rejuvenates them, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right. Now, I think that if we progress down this way, here's another one.
It is, and this is a sister to Old Blush. This is Napoleon, and Napoleon has that same characteristic. They come out lighter and actually age darker, and that's another unique thing about the China roses. We get a fruity fragrance with this class.
Oh.
We get workhorses in the landscape. I mean, bloom, 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 bloom.
Yeah.
But you have shrubs like Napoleon that'll only be about 4 feet tall by about that wide.
So this is pretty much
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Absolutely.
You know, that's really something good, because we plant things, and if we don't have it, if we don't know for sure what its maximum growth expansion might be,
Right.
then this is great. And this is Napoleon.
Napoleon, and the characteristics that I think make antique roses so worth growing are the fragrance, the great shape, but the disease resistance. So even if these roses get a little bit of black spot, they'll yellow the leaf, drop it, and keep on going.
Yeah.
But they also don't mind growing in a garden.
Well, if I look back in here, I can see the results of pruning.
Yes.
You cut right here, and look at all of this new growth that has come out.
Absolutely.
And just look at this beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's so tight. Oh,
It
wow.
is. It is.
Okay, we're spending too much time. Let's go find one more.
All right.
All the places I've been, I think I'm falling in love with this.
Me too.
This is maximum beauty.
I agree. I agree. Look at the solid covering there. Your timing is so good, Annette, to pick these guys up. This is one of the ramblers that we love to grow called Leontine Gervais. And it is a heavy spring bloomer. You know, we've talked about some of the repeat versus the spring. This puts every bit of energy it has into one bloom, 6 to 8 weeks, and I don't have a repeat flowering rose that can compete with that.
Okay, so it won't bloom some later on.
That's right, that's right. All the show is right here in the spring, 6 to 8 weeks. If we don't get too hot too quickly, we're gonna go a full 8 or 9 weeks. The fragrance is nice, and look at that glossy foliage.
Oh, I see it. I always look for a rose, what kind of rose it is. The leaf surface and the texture is just, to me, is as important as the bloom.
I agree. Think about this. The bloom's great, but if it's by itself, or you have not an attractive foliage, it's not so good. But against this dark green, healthy foliage, and this is one great rambler. One rose, 30 feet, no problem.
Wow. And it's pretty much disease resistant.
That's the beauty of it. You know, one of the things that we are committed to, once the rose goes in the garden, we do not spray. So you have in this rose excellent disease resistance. We don't have a concern. Certainly it could get black spot or it could get powdery mildew if the weather conditions are just right. The difference is these antique roses that you and I are talking about, they can slough off that leaf, keep on growing. My job is to fertilize, prune, and then leave them be. And after that.
So what do you fertilize with?
Well, I kind of alternate. I have learned a conventional fertilizer is great to get them started with in the spring, you know, just any general purpose rose food. You know, so I then follow that up 5 weeks later with an organic rose food. So what I've found is that if I can alternate and give them conventional feeding, we start here March 15th, and then every 5 weeks I'll keep fertilizing until the end of September. So I'll alternate a conventional fertilizer, and then I'll use an organic rose food. And the organic rose food, of course, has the benefit of feeding the soil as well as the rose.
Do you ever use the one that has a preventative for black spot insects?
Oh, for modern roses, I definitely do.
Okay.
For these guys, I do not.
All right.
But we've got a few modern roses mixed in that are a little bit more susceptible, and that's where we'll use the 3-in-1, something along those lines.
Now we're in a different class.
That's right. That's right. This rose, believe it or not, has been planted here for 15 years. So this is as big as it's going to get. And it's a polyantha. It's a member of that class, the same class that our sweetheart rose is a member of. So we see the small individual blooms that occur in clusters. And like you were talking about, look at how many there are in that cluster. This variety is called Lamarne. And it's spring, it's summer, it's fall. It just keeps on chugging.
So this is an extension of a floribunda.
Well, it's pre-floribunda. So the floribundas, exactly, you recognize the small individual blooms in clusters. This is the precursor to the floribunda, which also has flowers in clusters, but much larger.
Okay. I just don't think I have enough time left to plant all these.
No. Well, and this is one class with its more compact stature that you and I can use in containers.
Yes.
If they're 14 inches in diameter or larger, or in the garden.
All right. Fill us in.
All right, this is another polyantha. You know, we looked at Lamarne.
Yes.
This is a climbing version of polyantha called climbing pinky. And you see that same characteristic, the smaller individual bloom that occurs in clusters. A couple of advantages that climbing pinky offers us is that it's thornless. And it's just as heavy a bloomer, though. It's spring, summer, fall. And you notice, Annette, when we're looking at this, we're on the west side of the farmhouse. So it's in the shade of the overhang, but it's going to get hot afternoon sun about 1 p.m. and then it is relentless after that.
Wow. So now I think the deciding factor on this, it's a climber.
That's right.
But it's thornless.
Amen.
And you know, introducing children to flowers, you know, as beautiful as a rosy as if you hand them one.
Yeah.
You know, did you say if it reblooms?
Oh yeah, it's a heavy bloomer. And so part of that polyantha class is that they not only bloom in the spring,
That's
but
right.
when it's 100 degrees, when it's so hot in the middle of summer, this rose loves it.
That's right. The fragrance brought me here.
I know, I know. Isn't this nice?
It is.
This one is one of the hybrid musk classes of roses. This is a variety called Lavender Lassie. And we love Lavender Lassie because it offers us a spring, summer, and a fall bloom. But when you look at it, one of the things that I like is it illustrates what we've got to do with our climbers. If you hold that one, Annette, then you look up and down the length of it. Because this cane is not growing straight up, but rather just allowed to come over horizontally, everywhere there are leaves attached inside the axil of that bud, that becomes a flower bud rather than a vegetative bud. So when you look here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 clusters
You missed that one.
10 clusters of flower buds. And all we've got to do is with our climbers or ramblers, take those canes and go horizontal.
Like you're
rather than vertical.
exfoliating something.
Exactly. And in this case, it's on a pillar. So we're wrapping them, and they can be wrapped clockwise or counterclockwise or braid them together.
Yeah, because they don't have the ability to attach. You have to take care of that.
You're exactly right. You've got to take care of that. And then so when you're attaching them, we always recommend a stretchable material, right? No twistums because that's wire, but it can be stretch tie, it can be jute twine, anything that expands with the rose as it grows.
This is beautiful, and I love musk roses.
Me too, me too. So Lavender Lassie, I think is one you got to keep on your list.
Okay, and we have one that people might know about here, don't we?
We sure do.
Let's go to her. I think we can sum this up with a few words.
I agree. I think by now, most of your viewers will know and they'll recognize Peggy Martin. This is the spring flush of Peggy Martin, which is the thornless climber that I don't know, 30, 40 feet easily this rose will reach. One of the things that we've discovered, thankfully, is that it takes it a couple of years, Annette, but after the second or third year in the ground, you're going to start seeing some repeat flowering from Peggy Martin.
Okay, so it will give us more color later on in the summer.
Thankfully it does. The first year, all it thinks about is growth.
That's
and
right.
I mean,
And
Katie,
it does it.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
It is.
And then we get this smashing spring show of blooms. You can't see the leaves hardly for all the flowers when it's fully open. And then later on, second, third year, we start getting some repeat bloom.
And I think you said that you might have saved the best for last.
I did.
Well,
Can't wait
let's
for you to see
find
that.
it. We are 4 feet back, and I can smell this lady.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's pretty powerful, isn't it?
It is.
And the reason I wanted to talk to you and show you this one, Annette, this is the first rose that was introduced in the United States. And its name is Champney's Pink Cluster. That's an 1811 introduction. And John Champneys, who was a rice planter in Charleston, South Carolina, is
Yes.
the one that introduced this and shared it with the world.
Isn't that's just fabulous history.
I agree.
And
I agree.
That's wonderful.
Well, and as a member of the Noisette class, you remember the very first rose we looked at was
Yes.
Rev d'Or.
Yes.
So this was the size of the original Noisettes, small individual blooms that occur in clusters, right? Heavy bloomers. And you and I were talking earlier, spring, summer, and fall. So you can use Champney's Pink Cluster in the landscape in Tennessee anywhere as a small climber, 15 feet, 12, 15 feet, or you could prune it and grow it as a shrub. But the small individual blooms with the open center makes it a great landing pad for the bees. And of course, the fragrance is what I agree with you. That's one of the first things you notice about this rose.
So this one has not even really begun to shed its petals because it's right at the peak.
You timed it so perfectly right here.
Well, this is a trip that I always love.
Yeah.
And the information you've shared for us on roses that maybe are not upfront enough.
I agree.
And they're going to give great satisfaction. So we're here, this is April the 17th.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's the perfect time of the year to be here.
I agree. I think mid-April in central Alabama, it's where we're really peaking. And all of these great old garden roses, I appreciate so much you coming this time of the year because then you can really get a bird's eye view of what's happening in the garden with the roses our grandmothers grew.
And we have time to get one and plant it before fall.
Amen.
Well, thank you for being with you during your busiest time of the season. And we appreciate the knowledge that you have, that you've shared for our people at home.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
If you like gardening, you'll want to subscribe to this channel. We showcase gardeners, plants, and the joy that growing can bring.